but sorry. Thank you. You can also sneeze without any problem. No one will be offended. Hi, this is Andrzej, and this is the BMW S1000R. This is a sponsored video, but as always, an honest one. That's why I won't hesitate to point out, for example, that the front headlight is from the F900R, or that the bike doesn't really well off the clutch, but we'll get to that. Above all, I'm super happy that we're at Driveland, the track built by Tomek Kucha. He trusted us to be competent, that we wouldn't ruin his track, and that we'd use it as intended. So I hope that not only this, but also other videos with this type of machine we'll be able to make here, because the truth is, this is a naked BK universal motorcycle for riding everywhere. In the city, on the road, and on the track. But making a video with this motorcycle in the city would just mean I'd be puttering along at 50 kilometers per hour. Peer, but nice, City bike number. I know that you want to see what this motorcycle is capable of, and I took it not only here, but I also rode it on the track in Poznan. Step by step. I love sponsored content on the internet. Often it's just reciting what the manufacturer wants to say, using the words of, I won't even say editors, but YouTubers, influencers, and so on. So I won't be any different. Attention, I really like this. The smell of gasoline hangs in the air. No, because it's sealed. Seriously? Number. The engine is running at maximum rev. That's how it was today too. Pure power is being unleashed. Well, maybe we'll get to that. Time to showcase the BMW S1000R. Dynamic roadster on the outside, Superbike DNA on the inside. The chassis and engine carry RR Genus Ultra Agile, ultra precise, 165 horsepower from 194 kilograms of weight. Even more refined, even bolder, just like me, for the first time ever with the optimal M package. Blah, blah, blah. Hashtag never stop challenging. And I have to admit, the Beamer is pretty bold, but well, is it really bold? Smart. So this is a motorcycle in the hyper naked bike class, because apparently that class suddenly appeared out of nowhere. I mean, we probably know where it came from, but why bother going into that? But it exists, meaning the 1 liter class motorcycles. Basically, these are sport bikes stripped of their fairings with wide handlebars. Completely useless for everyday use, mainly because most of these motorcycles suddenly, well, maybe not most, but many of them suddenly offer 200 horsepower, 220 horsepower, 180 horsepower, which we simply have no chance of using. And this is the moment when we reach a certain limit, maybe not even of reason, but of reality, that we don't need 180 or 200 horsepower in a naked bike. Sure, it's nice to have them, nice to use them once just to say, oh, I used it. But seriously, do you really need it? So that's why the BMW has 165 horsepower. And honestly, when I asked the engineers why it has 165 horsepower, they told me because that's absolutely enough. And I have to admit that's true, because remember that when you gain something, you lose something else. So if we have a lot of power, we always end up with a slightly weaker low and mid-range. And with naked bikes, we ride them across the entire rev range, because we use them both slowly and quickly for commuting and on the track. So 165 horsepower, and it turns out that according to BMW, that's the optimum to then distribute 114 Newton meters and add power on the power and torque curves, so that the torque is as linear and predictable as possible. And indeed, that's something you absolutely can't deny. Polished to absolute perfection. I even jokingly remarked that if you were to imagine, you know, the most truly spectacular, utterly phenomenal Honda ever conceived, well, that would undoubtedly be this very BMW. The thing is, this motorcycle is, from the very beginning, from the lowest revs all the way to the top, phenomenally predictable. Sure, as a top end, it delivers a burst of power, but it's a burst that comes after a really solid dose of acceleration. And you expect that hell is about to break loose. And that's exactly what happens. It pulls from way down low, keeps accelerating, and you think, damn, is there still more? And then, damn, it just keeps going. I absolutely don't think this is a motorcycle that lacks power at any point. And not just here, not just on the street, but also on the Poznan racetrack when I rode it. For a naked bike, honestly, this is everything you could need. And this linearity, all of it really helps us later on in every range. Even riding this motorcycle on the rear wheel is so easy, of course, if you know how and already have the basics, because you just lift it up and control it with the throttle. It doesn't matter if you're in dynamic pro mode. But here come the cruiser riders, and they're making noise in my microphone. Thanks, guys. This motorcycle is, let me tell you, very quiet and efficient. Why make so much noise? Well, some people need it, so let them have it. Anyway, when you're riding on one wheel, it's just like this, like a precision scalpel. It does exactly what you want and doesn't scare you at all. Whether it's the power or the torque, everything is under total control. Even in dynamic pro mode, when the throttle is at its most responsive, and often, you know, motorcycles in this most sporty racing motorist dynamic, there are different names for it. Can be very, very aggressive on the throttle and often become useless then. And here, smooth, smooth, smooth. Everything is just as it should be. So the engine is truly phenomenal. It doesn't have the shift cam that's in the S1000R because it's practically the same engine. And that's just proof that if BMW wanted to make it 200 horsepower, all they had to do was leave the S1000R engine as is and just put it in here. But for example, thanks to that, we don't have the shift cam system, which is cool because it gives both strong torque and high power. But the torque in the S1000RR isn't lower or higher at the bottom than in this case, because it simply has less power there, so it can have more torque. So why this motorcycle? I joked at the beginning that it doesn't want to wheelie off the clutch, but actually that's a good thing. That's because it's the result of a very light crankshaft and very lightweight engine component. Because remember, when you pop the clutch on a motorcycle snap, it's not actually the power and torque at high revs that lift the front wheel, but rather the inertia of the crankshaft. We suddenly engage the clutch, and the crankshaft transfers its inertia to the rear wheel, giving it that extra power and kick, and off it goes. Here you really have to twist the throttle and pop the clutch decisively for it to lift at low speed. But still we can do it. But this is a great example that it's not the power or the torque that does it, but rather the engine components themselves. That doesn't change the fact that in first or second gear, you can confidently open up the throttle, and that's when it lifts onto the rear wheel most easily and enjoyably. Slice, slice. Then we shift up with this phenomenal quick shifter, because there's no other word for BMW's quick shifters than phenomenal. Since this quick shifter, both up and down, is just pop, 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 pop. You could probably even learn to play music on it. I think so. Awesome. Simply one of the best quick shifters you can get. And with this engine, which is very light and very linear, you can use it both at low and high RPMs. So when riding this motorcycle, you really only use the clutch to start and to stop. Really cool feature. What else do I like about this motorcycle? Honestly, it's a bit unfair because I'd like to criticize it, but there's really no reason to criticize it just for the sake of it. Well, I already criticized the front headlight because, I like the previous one more. It had character. It was distinctive, and here they've just put in a headlight that's the same as in the F900R. Maybe it's even exactly the same. And as for the looks, well, you can judge that for yourselves. But apart from that, it's hard for me to find anything else to complain about. Wait, maybe I'll say something about the brakes. Other than that, this motorcycle is really something. Frame is a sporty frame, stiff, but at the same time agile. It's agile precisely thanks to the lightness of the engine, because it doesn't resist those forces. You don't have to wrestle with it. It really turns, flicks from side to side, handles chicanes, changes direction easily. It all happens with phenomenal ease. This motorcycle is light even on paper, because even fully fueled, I think it weighed only 177 kilograms, filled to the brim. That's really very little. And on top of that, you can get the M package, which means carbon wheels that will reduce the weight even further. A titanium exhaust system, which will reduce the weight even further. So this motorcycle is not only light on paper, but it also feels light. However, this doesn't affect its stability, because often when a motorcycle is agile, light, and really quick, it can start to feel unstable at higher speed. No, this motorcycle here showed us at Driveland just how agile it can be, how easily it can switch from right to left, and so on. And when I rode it in Poznan, it also proved how stable it can be at high speed. I got this motorcycle on Satchwell, I got the M version, but that's the M, the suspension, brakes, nothing is different. It's just the looks a bit, carbon wheels. With this motorcycle, going below a minute 50 was no problem at all. I think that on good tires, minute 45 is a safe assumption for what you can do with this motorcycle on the Poznan track. So for a naked bike, you can overtake a lot of sport bike. The suspension is of course semi-active. As usual, you don't really feel how it works all the way. You just feel that the motorcycle is stable in rain and road mode. It's soft and nice. And when you switch to Dynamic or Dynamic Pro, it starts to get stiffer, but not in a way that you suddenly feel something is working. It just handles corners beautifully. So, what am I nitpicking about with the brakes? These are a bit of my own personal preferences. The braking power, everything is great. Surprisingly, I didn't have any issues with the brakes on the track either. I did with the first S1000RR, but not here. I don't know if it's because of lower speeds or weaker braking, but I don't think so. Simply put, nothing happened with these brakes, they didn't fade. The thing is, for me, it's hard to say enough. The feel of the brake lever is on-off, yeah? Because when you're riding, it's very, very stiff. And of course, there's modulation later on. When you press it, you can modulate it, but it's not that meaty. It's not as sporty as I like. There's power, there's everything. But I miss that, that finesse in the braking. That doesn't change the fact that, of course, we have ABS, cornering ABS, which is called ABS Pro. So you can grab a full handful of brake even while leaned over, and nothing will happen. You'll simply lose speed. But interestingly, I did some braking tests, because that's what's great about this place. I can finally do things like braking tests, compare braking and acceleration in different modes, and so on. And, well, I managed to stop faster in Dynamic Pro mode, where the ABS on the rear wheel was turned off. Well, because the motorcycle allowed the rear wheel to lift off the ground more, and when it landed, it was locked. So apparently it gripped a bit better there. But this showed that even with ABS on the front and turned off on the rear, we still have to manage things ourselves, because the bike lifted up, started to wobble a bit, so I had to handle that. So if you know what you're doing and have good conditions, let's be honest, the grip here is excellent. You brake better in Dynamic Pro than in regular Dynamic, meaning when ABS is working on both wheels, because then the motorcycle just pushes a bit more. But the difference is, I don't know, maybe a meter and a half. I know that in the case of emergency braking, that can be a lot, but I still think that in uncertain conditions, like on the road, I would go with Dynamic, just flooring everything to the end, and maybe I can aim somewhere rather than thinking about the rear coming loose, the rear sliding out, and still having to fight with that control. So on the track, I recommend Dynamic Pro right away, the first thing you should do. Or on a closed lot, if you feel like messing around a bit, if not, then just regular ABS, Dynamic or road, and off you go. What's funny next when it comes to the electronics is exactly this. I don't know if that's good or bad. You tell me, is it good or bad that motorcycles have started doing wheelies for us? Because when you switch to Dynamic Pro mode, you have to buy that little dongle. This is important because when we enter Dynamic Pro mode, we can change the settings however we want. And we have separate traction control, which most importantly in BMWs, we can still turn off the traction control with a single button if needed. It has always been like that in BMWs, unfortunately it remains, but now we can adjust wheelie control separately. And when you set wheelie control to level 1, honestly, I was scared. This is the test I'm always most afraid of, because you're putting yourself in the hands of the computer. You're saying, here you go, this is me. This is potentially me landing on my back. But it worked. I held the throttle at level 1, full throttle. The bike was going like this, and it just kept going until it hit the rev limiter. It just kept pulling that wheelie. Modern technology, on one hand, it's cool because if someone doesn't know how and is afraid, doesn't want to learn, they can try to pull that wheelie in a place like this or on some empty airstrip, anywhere really. Oh, right, Tomek, do you know how to ride a motorcycle on the rear wheel? I don't know how to ride the motorcycle at all. He doesn't know how to ride the motorcycle at all, but in a moment we'll tell him how to do it and he'll ride on the rear wheel. We'll see. And if you do know how to ride on the rear wheel, you'll say this is just lame, totally pointless. How can a motorcycle do a wheelie for you? Well, it actually can. So you tell us, is it good or bad that we have electronics that let us pop a wheelie without any effort? Oh! So what's next with this motorcycle? Stunt's what I love, which is goofing around and showing off on motorcycle. I'll tell you, this machine has so much grip that it's not as easy as it looks. The gears are long, you have to rev them out, and the best way to do stunts is to downshift aggressively and just go for it. And when there's less grip, the bike actually slides more willingly But here, it's so glued to the road because of the suspension. It manages things in such a way that there was a ton of grip at the back. I had to really fight to get it to slide. Of course, I could practice it, work on it, and it would eventually work, but it just doesn't really want to do it. It's the same with riding on the front wheel. I feel like this motorcycle is designed to stop as quickly as possible from high speeds, to enter a corner as fast as possible while braking from high speed. That's what it was made for, not for riding on the front wheel or sliding around. Of course, we can do anything. Chris Pfeiffer showed in the promotional video that it can be done in the promotional video. He even showed that you can shift gears with your right foot. I recommend you check it out in the promotional video. That's all. The motorcycle is simply made to be ridden very, very fast in various conditions, and it's designed so that anyone can ride it very, very fast in different conditions or not fast in different conditions, and anyone can handle it. Because honestly, today I had the impression that this is a motorcycle on which I don't want to put it crudely. I don't want to say that any idiot could ride it and not get hurt, because you can definitely hurt yourself on it. But if you don't know how to ride and you act recklessly, as long as the systems are on and the chassis is what it is, this bike really allows for a lot, forgives many mistakes, and lets you get away with things you normally wouldn't do. And we can do these things because we're on a closed track with lots of turns, roundabouts, a hill, and some straights. Oh, Jesus. It's so nice here. So to sum up everything, it's entirely possible that BMW has indeed made you know. I don't really like using the term the absolute best motorcycle or the best naked bike in the world. BMW definitely aimed to create the perfect motorcycle in the naked bike or hyper naked bike class. You know, perfectly balanced, fast yet gentle, easy to ride in the city, and blazing fast on the track. It has heated grips, cruise control, dynamic suspension that you can click, adjust, soften, stiffen, an electronic display, navigation, connectivity, just everything really. And in their opinion, they definitely achieved that. But in my opinion, did they manage to do it? I think they're very close, because I don't want to pass judgment just yet. But keep in mind, it's not that this is a sponsored video, because I have no problem criticizing a motorcycle for something. But I keep diligently looking and searching, and unfortunately I am not having much luck finding what I need at this moment. The exhaust is kind of quiet, but when you downshift it goes pop, 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 which also gives us a certain impression. Maybe this is the perfect naked bike, or even the best one? I don't know. You have to answer that maybe it's the best motorcycle for you. Is this what you expect from a machine? But it seems to me that if we look at different things at how people ride this motorcycle, you can really ride it in just about any way. From loading it up with a windshield and panniers to going completely wild on the track. So that's it. Let me know what you think about this motorcycle, or maybe if you've ridden it, or if you've ridden the previous version. What are your fantasies about the BMW S1000R? Because you've seen my fantasies here. Well, take care. Bye.